Welcome, everybody, to week 2 of TD Culture Lab Artrepreneur 101. Tonight, we're going to be learning about media relations, public relations, and how to get the word out about your events and news as an artist. My name is Sherri Parliament, and I am the Communications Manager of the Mississauga Arts Council. And I'm here with Mike Douglas, the Executive Director of the Mississauga Arts Council. This webinar is part of our TD Culture Lab Professional Development webinar series, presented by Mississauga Arts Council and sponsored by TD Bank Group. So a little bit about us first. So the Mississauga Arts Council is a registered charity dedicated to fostering the growth of the arts sector by cultivating creative opportunities and connections between artists and residents of Mississauga and beyond. MAC is dedicated to providing service-based programming to artists, funding artist-led programs, and growing awareness of the arts to build a vibrant and thriving cultural community. The Mississauga Arts Council acknowledges that the land on which we gather is part of the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and Wyandot nations. We are grateful to have the opportunity to work on this land and give our respect to these peoples and their ancestors who have been inhabitants and caretakers of this land since time immemorial. We also recognize that Mississauga is now home to many global Indigenous peoples. Okay, now let's get into media relations and public relations and promo. So I'm going to let Mike Douglas introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he does as MAC, as well as his experience in his career.
Well, thank you, Sherri. I think in the context of this get-together tonight, I'd like to focus on a part of my career where I was hired to tell stories to move audiences to do things, to act in some way or change the way they behaved. And so in those instances, those purpose-driven projects, motion picture projects, we would use drama or comedy or documentary style, a whole variety of communications tools to put forward a message that we wanted to use that was sufficiently connected to the people we were talking to, that they'd relate to it and allow it to become part of their thinking about how they were going to behave. So what they were going to take from it and use. And I think that's part of what we're all about here tonight. My career was spent as a documentary writer, director, producer, sometime music video director, occasionally a television drama director. So I kicked around various aspects of directing television programs for 33 years. And then I got into the community, and then I started a local community magazine, which prompted me to think I could do a city magazine. I did that for a while until I ran out of money. And then I found myself looking around for work, and I was fortunate to get hired by MAC as their executive director. So that was 9 years ago. So I've had a couple of different directions in my career, and what I'm looking forward to is talking about how you can analyze the people who are receiving your message and do something about it that helps your career. So that's what we're going to get into tonight. And it's my pleasure to work with Sherri and Jacqueline Mack-Almond and Susan Dernan and Sabrina Cunha, the keys to MAC's ability in Mississauga.
Thanks so much, Mike. Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about myself. So since joining, I'll talk about what I've done since joining MAC. I joined in January of 2020. Since then, I've led communications and media relations for both MAC and Saga Arts Hub in particular. In addition, during that time, I also developed and managed a range of music and film and video arts programs. And then prior to MAC during the time, I had various roles in multimedia and communication specialist roles, including positions at Redbrick Communications, which does communications for local municipal organizations as well as nonprofits. And I hold a honors Bachelor of Arts in Communication Studies and Multimedia Arts with a minor in theater and film. So working at MAC has been a obviously wonderful combination of all three of those key things, and I've learned a tremendous amount. And in particular today, I'm going to be talking about kind of what I have seen throughout working with artists such as all of yourselves, and kind of where the media landscape is going. And this is going to be kind of a tips and tricks of how we can help you get the word out about your events. So let's get into the fun stuff. All right, so this is our agenda for tonight. We are going to be talking about a little bit about what are media and public relations, the basics, the kind of definitions, kind of give you a sense of what that is and what people are looking for. We're also going to go through a couple sample press releases, which is essentially part of the toolkit, I'm calling it, and essential promotional materials part of that kit. How to get the media's attention, and then Mike's going to come in and we're going to talk about our thoughts and what we're seeing there. And then Mike is really going to get into like the tell your best story, as he mentioned, and we're kind of talk about getting the word about that and a little bit of best practices and tips. And then after that, we're going to have a Q&A session. So a little bit about what is media and public relations and what is it? Why does it matter to you as an artist? Media relations is a strategic communication process that focuses on building and maintaining relationships with journalists and other media professionals secure positive coverage for an organization or individual. And then in turn, public relations is the practice of managing and disseminating that information of an individual organization to the public in order to influence their perception. So see how these kind of work hand in hand together. Public relations and publicity differ in that PR is controlled like internally. So this is the stuff, the work that you're working towards to get the media's attention. Whereas publicity is not controlled and it is contributed by external parties. So that is kind of like the news outlets, somebody that is writing a blog post on you. That's not literally controlled by you, but you can give them the information to make a really great story. And that's what we are working on today. So sources of media can be broadly categorized into kind of like traditional or old media and new or digital media. So kind of easiest way to think of this is traditional media is something like newspapers, magazines, television, radio. When you think about how are people disseminating comms out there, think about what was originally created. It's something like a newspaper, magazines, stuff like that I just listed. New media is now kind of what we're more seeing in the landscape is internet, social media, podcasts, and streaming services. So we'll get into a little bit more about that, but that just kind of gives you a sense of what this is. So what is a press release? Basically, it is an official statement, written or record, that an organization or individual, as an artist, issues to the news media and beyond. So whether we call it a press release, people have called it like a press statement, a news release, a media brief, we're kind of all talking about similar things. And what I want to get into today is what the key things that everybody should have in a press release. And what we're really looking for is including the 5 Ws. So making sure that this information is included. And it's very easy to not include it. So, it's the who, the what, the when, and the where, and the why as well. And this is typically included in the first paragraph of the main key section. And I'll go through this in the second slide and show you actual examples of this. And then a couple tips, keep the press release to 1 to 2 pages long. Include a quote from an individual that this is the part of the news story to explain the why behind the announcement. And Mike is kind of give some tips of what is the best quote that news and journalists and promoters are looking for. And write the press release in a newsy, straightforward manner so that the journalist reading it can imagine it as an article on the news site. So when you are writing this press release, you are writing it from the perspective of why a journalist would want to write about you, right? So what makes it an interesting story? Think about that as you're writing it. And tidbit, don't forget to include the About Us section that provides more details about you and yourself as an artist. So that would be kind of a section of the bio at the end of who are you, maybe a little bio about you as an artist, what is kind of stuff that you write about if you're a literary artist. I'm going to show you one of these resources here, but there's a lot of great templates here. This information is also going to be sent to you after the webinar. Okay, so here we go. This is HubSpot. So this is one of the resources that I would highly recommend to you if you're thinking of how to write a press release, trying to get some examples, some templates. It's a really useful article blog post that is continuously being updated with lots of new templates that you can use. It goes into what is a press release, benefits of it, types, samples, how to write one, and then it goes down further and further from here. And it will give you kind of a structure that you can use from as you're writing this together to get ready to send out. It kind of has examples of what it is for event marketing. So something like you have an event coming up to attract promotion or news outlets, and you'll go through from here. So that's just one of the examples that you can take advantage of. And then there's a couple more here. There's how to write a press release. That is a course that is free on LinkedIn. And I've taken it before. It's really useful and helpful. There's also a couple more here that is for artists in particular. And this is also just an example of how to write one, for example, an art exhibition, but you could use that for different things as well. So now we're going to talk about the type of sample of press releases, and I'm going to kind of take you through this. So what does the formatting look like? What do you need to include? And I'm also kind of going to explain to you what I've learned going through this process and tips and tricks of how you can learn. So one thing is the contact information, and the for immediate release at the top here, as you can see, the title and italicized subheading to summarize the news. So this is in this section. The news location, as you can see here, and I'll pull this open for you, and the news angle as well. This can be a drop-down subheading. And then 2 to 3 paragraphs to add context and additional details, bolded facts and figures, company description at the bottom, and those little 3-pound symbols at the end that basically means to signify the end of a press release. So let's take through an example. This is the one that we just recently written for the 2025 Saga Song of the Year graphic. So this is for Joelle Rose and her winning song, Birdhouse. As you can see, we had quite amount of partners involved, so their logos are quite well represented here. We wanted to give them good recognition. We have us, and then we also have Metalwork Studios, Sounds Unite right above, so we can give great recognition to partners and sponsors, and we have that into the graphics here. The reason why I'm mentioning the importance of this in graphics is that this is such a key element for your press release. This is the first thing that they're going to see when a journalist or promoter opens this email. So keeping in mind that attention spans have dwindled. So I was watching a webinar on attention spans and like how much time we have. And they said you have 7 seconds. So you have about 7 seconds to get a journalist's interest into your news story. So making sure that this section is really ready to go and has the most amazing information possible. So as you can see, wonderful graphic. There's Joelle, lovely. It's clear what this is. It's a song. She's in Metalworks. Great. And then we get down into it and it says, rising emerging singer-songwriter Joelle Rose wins the 2025 Saga Song of the Year contest for Birdhouse. Now that is very short and sweet, but it conveys who this is about, what is it for, 2025 Saga Song of the Year contest, great. Title of the song as well, so people will kind of keep that in their minds. We have to kind of remind people over and over again of it's song Birdhouse, right, okay. Then it says the date. This is, again, a formatting thing that HubSpot is really good to get into. And then the short and sweet intro of the who, what, when, or why. Miss Saga Arts Council, Metalwork Studios, Downtown United Canada, with media partner with Saga Music, are pleased to announce Saga Song of the Year, emerging songwriter who represents in Miss Saga, Joelle Rose. And then it gets into a beautiful quote from Joelle, why this song means so much to her. And a wonderful little section here is not only where I received my musical training, but also where I met my co-writer. He was part of the song, so there's a relevancy here. We wrote and performed the guitar. Releasing my debut song through this contest feels so special, like a full circle moment, right? And then this talks about the inspiration behind the song. There's a story here. It's not just, I liked birdhouses, so we're going to do a song about birdhouses. No, the reason why it's called Birdhouses, and it was inspired by the friendships she built growing up in Mississauga. Birdhouse is Joelle's heartfelt love song to her friends, a tribute to the chosen communities that shape us. And the reason why she wants people to listen, another why, she hopes the song resonates with listeners, celebrating the many forms of community and the people who became like family along the way. This is in the first 3 paragraphs. So you can see through all the resources that I've given you is that these 3 core paragraphs are very important and they're very relevant to getting the journalist's attention, right? So these are all the couple of examples. I'm not going to get too much into it, but I have included ones about literary, and I've also have ones visual art. This is another one just from the AGO, and I also have another one from a dancer included in this slide as well. And now that you have your press release, and I strongly recommend taking the time to compile the details, the who, what, when, where, why, quotes that you're thinking of, thinking about the story. Once you have a good solid foundation with your press release, now you can make the promotional material from that. So the promotional material is stuff that you're going to be sending to somebody like me, right? Who is going to be getting the word out through local arts groups. It's through something called sagaartshub.com, where we're going to add the events to event calendars, newsletters. This can be something like a local news station that wants to maybe potentially do an interview on you. They need this core information. And so, what that core information is a graphic, like I mentioned. It could be something like the one I just showed you that is in the press release. It is mainly essentially has to be a poster that explains what this is that you're trying to talk about. It should have the 5 W's included and be really inspirational and why do people want to go? It has to really grab and hook people in. Then is a short 150 word or less description about the event. This should start with an attention grabber, like the hook, description of the event, the 5 W's again, the why does it matter information, and the call to action. So the link to buy tickets, event page, etc. The amount of times that I have unfortunately not seen the call to action is not great. So if somebody is reading, you have like a great graphic or you have a short description and you've kind of got all this material, but if you don't have a link at the actual end of your stuff, I don't know where to buy tickets, right? Like I really want to go to your event. I've already marked it in my calendar, but where am I going to go? So even if you don't have a website, for example, Eventbrite is really good for that. If it's an event, I believe they still have a free version, or if they do have a version, it's still fairly cheap. Or you can make a Facebook event that is free. Just have somewhere that you can go that has the designated information for that event or news, something like that. And like I just said, once you do the press release, you can take the key information that was included in the press release for your 150 word or less copy. So make things a little simple for yourselves. You can take the press release that has all the information. That's typically what I do as well. Then you take the core elements from that and make into a short little copy. And I've already said this before, but make your graphics and photographs engaging. Ask yourself, why would an audience member want to come and engage with your work? And before we get actually onto that topic of, how to get people engaged, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the current media landscape of where we are at in 2025, because I think it is very relevant right now. So media landscape is ever changing. In 2025, we can kind of see there's a significant shift to short form video content. And a lot of artists are having to wear a lot of different hats and kind of create this content creator to get the word out about themselves. It just kind of comes with the role. Like you have to be able to, have a social media following a branding. And it's a lot of work, right? Especially because now that traditional media is kind of starting to come to a little bit of a halt. And that's just the reality. But if we have all the material and you're working towards it, we can get good news coverage for you. So currently in Mississauga, there's a lack of traditional media. As we can see, we're kind of in Toronto shadow a little bit, but we do have Mississauga News. There's iansaga.com and there's also ymedia.com. So I will add that as well to this PowerPoint when it gets sent to you. Those are three key great media organizations in Mississauga. They're doing great work for local artists and the community. And there is also other sections of the bigger, Toronto Star. They're doing feature local sections of their media sites. And then, as we know, social media, it's kind of like a key to getting the word out in short form content. So Instagram is a great tool for any discipline, but I personally recommend it for visual artists just because it's like an imaging platform, but there is reels as well that are really popular. TikTok is trending. There's a lot of growth for musicians, especially, and dancers. So I've seen even musicians that we've worked with that have put up their demos up on there and gotten thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of views, and they've got so many connections through that. So highly recommend checking out TikTok if it is relevant to you and your audience. So it's about telling your story. So I'm going to let Mike kind of get into this.
Wow. Well, thank you very much, Sherri, and good evening, everybody. When you're doing this, it's not easy. As you know, Sherri's just outlined a series of projects, the press release itself, the way in which you might create a graphic in support of what your project looks like and is. Knowing the timing, there was a question about, well, when do I do this? Well, typically, You want to hit the inbox, I think, Sherri, 2 weeks ahead of the event. For people who are going to be reposters of it, maybe you want to go earlier. One of the things that we do with events of ours is we'll purchase ad space in Facebook in particular, but Instagram as well. And we will promote things ourselves. It doesn't cost a great deal for it. The thing I'd like you to consider is your own degree of self-confidence. And how much of that are you prepared to share with your audience? Because if you enjoy sharing a message, if you enjoy talking about yourself and your work and what it means to other people and where it came from and why it matters, if you enjoy it, chances are someone's going to enjoy hearing about it. So you have to get to the point, really, enjoying telling your own story. And that's not easy. A lot of us get self-conscious about this. And so there is something driving you. And what, at its most interesting and its most universal in terms of its appeal to other people, what is it that drove you to make this project? Where's the passion coming from? People almost expect artists to have passion about their work, with good reason. And they like seeing it. So in those moments when you realize, I've got to describe what I'm doing in a couple of paragraphs here, and I should really have a quote that really grips people. Well, I think you go back to the origins of this. You do 3 forms of analysis just to get you warmed up. And the first one is you analyze who you want to see at your event, who you want to purchase your book, who you want to see what you've done lately, listen to your music, whatever that audience member's interest is. How are you appealing to it? What have you got to say that might hook them? Where did it come from that could connect with them? So first of all, analyze the kind of person and their interests that you want to and have been relating to. Who are they? What are they doing? And why could they care about your work? And then look at the assets of your work, both in terms of technique, perhaps the way you used different forms, tools to tell your story, create your artwork. What is there in the sort of the how-to, the how it was made type story that would be of interest to people? And then what do you want people to do once they hear this message about why it's passionately important to you, what you brought to it in terms of technique, talent, experience, and so on? What do you want them to do? What do you hope they're going to do? If you're touching on those notes, you're going to have a robust story. And if you enjoy telling it, and if you take the time to make it enjoyable to read and to consider, and that it's stimulating, then you're going to have people paying attention to your message. They may not come out to this particular event or purchase this particular product, but you'll have made an impression on them. So too with media members. They're people. Even though we talk about them in this big collective sense, they're individuals, and they respond to individuals. They respond to the particular. So please don't be generalizing about anything in this. You are the means through which someone else can enjoy a stimulation of some sort. So what is it that stimulates you? What do you want to pull from yourself and put out there? It's exciting. And the thing is, it gets easier the more you do it. And you are going to attract attention from someone, you don't know who yet. But let's look at that person for a second. Anyone you're going for, when we say a media outlet like the Toronto Star, Insaga, Mississauga News, they're not like an amorphous organization. They're a collection of individuals. And there are particular individuals assigned to the subject matter that's of interest to you. Maybe it's visual arts, maybe it's music, maybe it's literature. Well, read what they've written. know what they have to say, have an idea of what they've done recently, and then be able to compliment them with your email that has this press release attached, or this notification, or this promotion that picks up on the fact that, well, I really enjoyed your piece on whomever. I thought it brought together some really good ideas about this and that. So you're conversing with them, no ask yet. I appreciated that. And that is why I've reached out to you with what I'm up to, what I'm doing. And because I think you'll find it interesting. And then you've attached, and for your consideration, to help attract an audience to this show that is really important because of this and that. And then you share with them your press release. You're the engine. And the more you enjoy it, the more powerful the message will be. And the more you realize that you didn't do it for a simple reason because you had needed to do something, there's more behind it. So don't be afraid to dig in to why you did something, to look for that piece of it that's of most interest to someone else and share it. That's how I think you tell your best story, is through yourself. And by the way, you really do learn a lot by reading others. So Sherri has provided links to half a dozen really relevant press releases. You read those, and you're going to have an idea of how you put your press release together. And the thing is, the press release is one tool that feeds other tools. And it really helps you when somebody stops you on the street and asks you, what are you doing? Or at a show, or at a concert, or whatever it is. Because in this process, you're amplifying your ability to describe your own work, to be your own best advocate. So this is a multifunctional experience that you're about to enter. So that's what I'd like to say at this point, Sherri.
No, that's wonderful. Thanks so much, Mike. I know we've also gotten a couple questions throughout and I've answered them through, but I'm going to kind of go through them. Um, so they're talking about the kind of length of press release. So I believe the standard is 1 to 2. And I did mention here that please do not try to do more than one. Again, also, like I mentioned, journalists have a lot going on their plates and you want to get to the main core elements of your story quickly. You can go over 2, but I would kind of recommend the second page is more about where you're dropping in the abouts of artists. So let's say the first page is like the who, what, where, why. The second page can have kind of the, continuing background or information. Like that's okay if you can't all fit it in there. There is a question of what are your thoughts about using AI to help generate press release? So, and this is what currently we're doing right now, is that we are using AI in the sense of like we like write all of our components first, and then you can use something like ChatGPT to get a second opinion, right? But you're not going to copy directly from ChatGPT and then place it into your thing, right? So you're going to go ahead and write from your perspective, and then you can get opinions. So, for example, trying to think of a hook or like a different way to say something when you're struggling is helpful. There's a lot of different AI things that can kind of give you examples of hooks and newsletter subject lines, things like that to kind of get you rolling. But I would not say use directly in copy, just copy and paste. It's just clear that that's like written by AI.
This is not a one-shot deal. You're not, this is not going to be your only show, your only album, your only book. This is a project. And this time, effort you expend in your skill set at telling your story is immensely valuable. And you're cheating yourself if you rely on AI, in my opinion. You're not really exercising your muscle. Use a long sentence, use a short sentence. Ask a question in your quote. What would you do if you're assigned a project to write a song about the history of Mississauga? Well, here's what Mikey Bloom did. So we used a question. I'm paraphrasing that particular press release. But what would you do when this happened to me? I did this. The moment you create a circumstance where somebody else can see themselves in it or ask themselves that question, you've brought them into the conversation you want to have with them. you're being interesting to others. You're thinking of others in the way in which you present yourself, your story, your piece of work you want to share. And you're prepared to be emotional about it. You're prepared to be personal about it because that's more interesting. And so, a lot of us feel we can read and react to AI, that there are some subtleties in the way AI works that indicates that it's from a from an AI resource. That is a great way to have your press release tossed immediately because it's too easy and it's a little insulting because you're trying to create the notion of uniqueness and credibility through you and your work. And if you're using a collective intelligence like AI to tell your story, then it may be that your story isn't that interesting. And it may be that that's pretty easy to see for a reporter or an editor who's looking at it.
And then we have another question here. So, what do you think about art consultation that helps visual artists? Oh, to promote, like a artist promoter. Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, I think if you have a media company or a promoter that you're working with that can kind of help you work on these news and stuff, great, wonderful. I know a lot of artists that can do that, and they'll hire somebody to work with press release, but it costs money. And I recommend learning these tools as well, which is, why we're trying to go through them today and think about them, because it's not just about writing a press release and, trying to, get connections with media and stuff. It's also really helpful to kind of work on pitching yourself too, right? To people. So like when you're writing a press release and you're trying to think about, right, what is your story? And as like Mike mentioned, like thinking about the language, when you are working with a booker or you're working with a new exhibition or somebody's going to be able to buy your artwork, doing a practice like this is going to be very helpful for you. So I would recommend, you know, yes, working with a promoter, getting that if you have the tools and the means and the financial stability to do that, great. But I also recommend trying to do the stuff work on yourself. Another comment here we have is, what if you cannot afford regarding the financial means? Is there another way to get media's attention despite this? Okay, so let me clarify a little bit. So what I was talking about earlier is, let's say an artist is hiring a media company or a promoter. So they're hiring a promoter to work as your representative, and they're going to send these press releases directly on your behalf. So they're putting their own work into it. So you are hiring them as an employee. But if you are writing a press release yourself, you're reaching out to news organizations. They have their emails online. You can quickly fill out a contact form for, in Saga. Editors are constantly checking their emails. You can do that for free. So there's not like a financial block there. It's more if you want somebody else to write your stuff or somebody else is doing that work. Another question we have here is, when trying to figure out your story, how do you figure out the interesting points that will catch people's attention while still being genuine? I'll answer a little bit, and I think Mike can talk a little bit more about this.
Why don't we come up with an example?
Mhm.
I'm not sure what this person's interest is, but I think it might be fun just to say, okay, what is your piece? What is your work that you want to espouse? And maybe there's a way we can sort of identify it, because frankly, in my career working with individuals and corporations, one of the things that travels along with that experience has been people underestimating themselves and failing to see their own successes, the things they've surmounted, with a focus on what they didn't do or what they couldn't achieve. And it's very limiting. If you walk into anything with that, oh, it wasn't as good, or I should have done this, or you're paralyzing yourself. Really, it's sad, and I've seen it at a corporate level. I've seen it at individual level, and I'm trying to push that back. Okay, you're okay. You don't need to be perfect, but what you care about needs to come through. And that's that. So if you've got something and you're doing it and you don't really care about it, then chances are nobody else will either. So I suspect there is something you do really care about, or you wouldn't do it, right? So ask yourself what that is and what it means to you. And it will be, I very much believe it will be interesting to others. And I'm happy to play around with an example. We were talking today about, well, a landscape, and you've got a particular piece in the landscape that really grabbed you. Well, there's a reason why. And it may have to do with your past, your childhood, somebody else. A movie, it could be whatever it is. It was a stimulant that got you going. And chances are when you express it and talk about it and why and what you did about it, somebody else will be interested in that journey. Okay? Especially if you make it tight, personal, pointed.
When you look at your story, you need to make it personal. So the way that people make connections with one another is talking about their personal experiences and their stories, right? So journalists can clearly see if there's a personal connection to your work, right? And be allow yourself to be honest and open about what it matters, right? This kind of key language here is stuff to make it your personal connection story get made, quicker, clear and concise to the journalist, right? So think about what it matters and then, write it in a way that gets the hook. Plain language is used. I highly recommend using plain language. Basically, there's another little resource down there as well. It's essentially a style of writing where the message is conveyed in a clear, concise, and easily understood manner for your intended audience. From a journalist perspective, they need like a clear, what are you looking for? What is this exhibition about? Right. So like getting to the point quicker and making it interesting and making it like easier to understand is very helpful for people. Right. So right now is kind of like best practice and tips. So we've already kind of talked about this. Is like telling your best story, practice writing in a news promotion style. So another tip with that is reading other news articles. So going to in Saga, going to their culture section, for example, or Toronto Star, and reading what are they writing about, right? So putting in, and if you, let's say you're a visual artist, read an example of their exhibition that just recently came out. That's going to be helpful for you when you write your press release, because you can see, oh, well, this reporter in particular really likes stuff that is local to this section of Mississauga. And they really like stuff that is going on in, let's say, photography, right? Just use an example there. So trying to find that is really helpful. And also start getting the word out early. Please, please, please get the word out early, because a lot of journalists and promoters, such as myself, has a strict content planning schedule that they're working on. Of course, we know breaking news reporters, and we have a lot of people that are working 24/7. And there's kind of like different categories of journalists and what they work on and what they focus on and write about. But the earlier you can get at the info, the best that people can start adding to their content calendar. So like Mike said earlier, I'd say 2 to 3 weeks is really good. But you also have to keep in mind, don't do too early. Like if you're sending something like 3 months early, just going to be forgotten about, right? So send something in the 2 to 3 week window. That's very helpful for people, and that works really great. My key advice, and it's more confidence booster, even though the media landscape is constantly evolving, having the right tools and a strong foundation, starting with a solid press release and supporting promotional materials, can set you up to take advantage of opportunities across traditional and digital media platforms. Thank you all, everybody, for joining us for this evening. We hope you really learned some great tips and tricks and are empowered to work with media and promotional tools to get the word out about your news and events. MAC has lots of opportunities for artists. Feel free to visit our website at macarts.ca. Sign up for our weekly newsletter, which I write, which is our Hub Highlights newsletter. And you can get lots of information on local arts news and events. And if you become a MAC member, you can become part of that newsletter and on sagaartshub.com. So we highly recommend that. It's on our website. And we would like to thank TD Bank Group again for supporting tonight's event. But most importantly, thank you all for joining us. And we hope you enjoy the rest of your beautiful night. Thank you, everybody.